Welcome to the Golden Storyteller. Hi, this is your host Rex, and welcome back to another series on our show. Our show can be found on podcasts, on YouTube, and sometimes live streamed. The whole premise around the Golden Storyteller is to tell stories about my hometown Golden, things that are golden, or just lessons that are golden. Well, today I have a funny story from my youth that involved my dad, and it was kind of a funny thing. My dad was a scavenger. He was born in 1931 and basically grew up on a farm and in the city. Never had any money in his family. And so anytime there was something free or value, he would work pretty hard to get a hold of it. We had these neighbors that lived across the street to us to the east, uh, the Stroh family. Now, the Stroh family had their mother, Mrs. Stroh's mother, who lived in the mother's apartment up on the second story. So she had her own kitchen and the whole setup on the second story. Well, this had been just after she had passed away, and Mrs. Thew was her name. And Mrs. Thew lived to be, I think, 96 or 98. She lived a long time. She was a crazy kind of lady. We were always doing things for her. I remember we used to go pick dandelions, and we would take a whole grocery sack of dandelions over to us, and she'd give us a quarter. Well, anyway, the Stroh family was gracious enough to offer this organ that they had on the second story to my dad. So my dad was excited about this. Now, we didn't need an organ at the time. I think everybody that would have played an organ had already moved out of the house. But anyway, he decided he's going to take this organ. So he went over and took a look at the organ, and the Stroh house there backs up to South Table Mountain, and there's the hill, and it's a fairly steep hill in the backyard. So the house, the walkway to the second story was up a hill, and this stairway was very precarious. It had no steps that were even. It was not made out of concrete. It was made out of just stones, flat stones. So whoever designed and built the walkway had done it by hand. There wasn't a step or that was the same width, the same height. So it was always precarious, and it seemed like we were always dropping something off, and you darn near fell down the stairs every time you traveled them. So my dad surveyed this, and in the second floor there was a bridge that went from the second floor out to the backyard, and there was the at the gate, and then it started down that precarious sidewalk and that path down the hill. Well, we looked at that and examined this, and he made the determination that that just wasn't going to work because it was just far too dangerous. Another problem was the organ was too wide to get through the gate at the top of the hill. So he decided he was going to figure out a way to pull the organ out and lower it down into the front yard. Well, my dad was an ingenious type person, so he went off to go set up a system to basically lower this down. Now, he was kind of a scavenger and always had some sort of pipe or something laying around, and so he was going to jimmy up a rigging system to get this organ from the second floor down to the front yard, just one level down. So I went over. He had called for me because I'd stop by, and he called for me to stop over and help him. And I went across the street, and oh my goodness, here he had this thing all jerry rigged. He had a 4-inch pipe, a metal pipe that was positioned up in a tree in between two notches of V's and branches. So picture the branch where they would be the main trunk and then one veers off. He had the pipe basically set up in between two necks or crooks of a tree as set as for the pulley to be affixed to. So he had the pulley chained onto the pipe. Now the problem with the pipe or the opportunity, whatever you want to look at it, is it had some holes drilled in it, and it had been welded. So anyway, he gets it all put together, and we end up pulling the organ out onto the porch roof. So we're really just dropping it down one full level. So we took it out this big window, put it onto the porch roof, and got it all buckled up. So ropes and straps, and made it so it would be secure. So when we were lowering it, that it wouldn't fall. Well, we got to the point where everything was prepped and ready to go, and he had the rope and the pulley, and he was going to be the one who used the pulley on the end of the rope to lower it down once we moved the organ off of the patio roof. Well, it was the time. It was like D-Day. It was ready to go. So he was on the end of the rope, and we basically slid the organ off of the edge of the roof and let it free into the air. Well, the weight of the organ, he had miscalculated, was so heavy, and the pipe had been weakened because the holes in it and it had been welded, that the pipe basically bent in half and went down, and the entire apparatus plus the organ went crashing to the ground. After the big thud and the shock, I can still remember the look on his face, and he was saying his normal "God damn it," and he was pretty ticked off. We basically looked at the organ, and it was broken. Now, it wasn't in 100 pieces or anything like that, but it was in a condition where it was not repairable. And we were laughing. We were laughing so hard. And the more we laughed, the more he would say, "God damn it." And he was basically doing his mad dance in the front yard. And I felt so bad for him, even though it was hilarious because this thing just went down thundering crash. He had it engineered. It would have worked if the pipe would have stayed structurally sound. But because of the weakness, it folded in half in a V and the whole thing went crashing down. So that was a story about the organ that was never to be, the free organ that just didn't work out. And it was another golden memory of my dad because he could basically jerry rig just about anything. His time on the farm when he lived out in Hyannis, Nebraska, and worked on my great grandfather Quinn's ranch, the time that he worked on the Hyannis Dumbbell Ranch, and then at my grandfather, my maternal grandfather's ranch up in Valentine, he was a master of putting things together. He was always figuring out something. He was always manufacturing something. You give him a welder and he would fix things, and sometimes it would be embarrassing the stuff that he put together. But I tell you, he found a way to make things work. He was his own basically field engineer. So that's my story today. The Oregon that was never meant to be, that went crashing off the roof and had to be thrown in the trash. So tune in next time, and if you like our story, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to the podcast, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and we'll have more stories coming soon on The Golden Storyteller.